let's go in order and talk about each of these guys. But first, what was sort of the impetus for you to want to put this piece together?
Well, it's funny. It's funny because I've been on a few radio shows like this over the last month. I'd say ever since the Jameis Winston signing, the biggest football question of the offseason has been, is Cesar Ruiz going to play center or guard? And that's, we would have probably known by now. We probably had a good feeling if they were in OTAs and minicamps. I'm not even sure the Saints know for sure. I think they want him to be the center, but there's no way they can put that in ink until they see him actually snap the ball to Drew Brees and work over this. One of the interesting things Dan Rocher said when he was on a Zoom call last week, he was talking about the cadence being something that these guys have to get used to. But then, instead of just doing an article on Ruiz, it's really equally fascinating with Zack Baun because he's going to have to switch position. He could have used the full offseason, and then Adam Trump was obviously making the leap from Dayton to the NFL. He could have used the full offseason. So we don't have a ton of question marks about the Saints. We can pretty much guess what we're going to get from all their returning starters and newcomers like Emmanuel Sanders and Malcolm Jenkins. These three rookies are really the only major question marks about how much they're going to be impacted by the time they've missed.
Do you have a feeling as to how much the Saints need these rookies to be impact players?
Mm-hmm. They need Ruiz to be. They've already cut Larry Warford, so they're convinced he can be. Obviously, they got rid of their safety net there. Now, I mean, obviously Nick Easton could step in if needed, but I don't think they have any doubts that Cesar Ruiz is going to be ready to start. And they said that when they drafted him, and they said part of the reason they drafted him is because they were putting more emphasis on rookies who could handle missing an off season. So they need him to either play center or right guard. I still think center is what they would like. But, if Eric McCoy has to play center for another year because it's just too hard to make both of those switches in a shortened off season, I don't know for sure. The other guys, I think it would be great if Zack Baun can make an impact because we listed linebacker and edge rusher as probably their, two of their top three needs this offseason. But he can be a guy who only plays 25, 30 snaps a game and is effective. Ideally, he's an every down linebacker, sort of replacing what A.J. Klein was, but that is not a must. That would be a bonus. And then Troutman, I think everything would be a bonus with him. They obviously have Jared Cook and Josh Hill and Taysom Hill at tight end. If Troutman is able to play 30-plus snaps a game, I think that would be a bonus.
I'll come back to Baun and Troutman in a second. Let's go to Ruiz, though. Do you know, Mike, if there are plans for Brees and Ruiz to get together to work on things like cadence that you alluded to?
Not that I know of. Training camp, no, they still get ideally 6 weeks together or something. So I don't know if they've planned for them to get together in San Diego or anything. I don't know if they're allowed to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if that's in the works. But, that's something that if they get a full training camp, that should be enough time. But, and you kind of have to do it with the full offensive line and everything to really get the feel. But Dan Rocher did admit last year that it took several weeks even into the season before Eric McCoy and Brees were fully in sync. Some of the things we never would have noticed watching from afar. But he said that took a while. That's not an easy adjustment. He said even Max Unger will tell you that wasn't an easy adjustment.
Do you? All right, last one on Ruiz. We'll move on. But do you feel like having? And maybe for them, it's like one of those things where you can't see the forest through the trees, where you'll notice every little nuance. But McCoy did have a really good rookie season. Does the fact that you've seen a rookie play that position successfully, that maybe you could have that transition?
Yeah, no, look, I think just reading the tea leaves that the plan was for Ruiz at center. I think he was a better college center. He was obviously drafted higher than McCoy. If they came out in the same year, I think we'd all assume Ruiz is the center. But you're right. I'm like 55% Ruiz at center, 45% McCoy at center, because there's a total argument to be made for how about the guy that has started 17 NFL games at center at a pretty high level? Why not keep that guy at
center? It's going to be fascinating, especially given all the circumstances. For the sake of time, let's go to Troutman just because we'll stay on the offensive side. When you rattle off the name of tight ends, Mike, they're so deep at that position. Like, how many guys realistically are they going to keep at that position this year?
Well, I mean, and then you've got Taysom Hill and you've got Tommy Stevens. Everything. Tommy Stevens might be practice squad or inactive. I'd be pretty stunned to see him on the field playing offense this year, very much. But you're right. I mean, you have to assume Troutman's going to play. Josh Hill's going to play. Jared Cook's going to play. Taysom Hill's going to line up at the tight end position. So we're kind of maxed out there. But hey, they can have 2 and 3 tight ends on the field. They're going to run more 12 personnel. Dan Campbell said. He actually said the year that they were really good at running the football is when they had Michael Homanui and Josh Hill and like various options. So they like how that can help their run game, how that can help their pass game, how that can help their versatility. So they're going to try to find ways to get them all out there and rotate them in and out. So there'll be packages with Troutman and Hill because Troutman's a good blocker when we want to run. There's going to be packages with Troutman and Cook when we want to pass, and they're hoping Troutman can be a hybrid of the two.
I heard the comment that Campbell made, kind of comparing Troutman to Kittle and Gronk. Like, am I misinterpreting what he said there? Because it seemed like they're really high on that potential.
Here's what he said though with the Kittle comparison, and what he said was, it's become harder and harder to find guys coming out of college in recent years who do the dirty work and actually enjoy and sort of embrace doing the dirty work and the blocking. It's funny because I put that on Twitter when he said that, and somebody replied, "Oh yeah, well, Kellen Winslow used to do that, and Tony Gonzalez used to do that." And it's like, of course they used to. It's just it's sort of become not cool anymore to block if you're a tight end. Everybody wants to be Jimmy Graham and just put up the offensive numbers. But he said the Kittle explosion has been good because guys are embracing that again. Guys are saying that's who I watched the last couple of years. That's who I try to emulate. And that's what they like about Troutman. They actually, Sean Payton said this the night of the draft. He thinks Troutman was one of the best blockers in the draft, and they actually think he's further ahead right now as a blocker than a receiver, even though he had like 1,200 yards and double-digit touchdowns or whatever he had last year. So they like that he is a willing blocker who doesn't mind doing some dirty work, and he's not just trying to be a receiver at the position.
Couple more minutes with Mike Triplett, ESPN.com. Make sure you follow him on Twitter, @Mike Triplett. Really good piece up right now about the Saints rookie draft picks that they're expecting to have an impact. Let's flip to defense. The guy we haven't talked about yet is Zack Baun. Mike, I mean, I'll just leave this open-ended. What is a realistic expectation for Baun as a rookie linebacker?
I really have no idea. He's got me a little flummoxed because I was surprised they drafted him in the first place. Because I've covered this team, the whole time, the whole Peyton era, and they have been flummoxed by the 200 and the smaller edge rusher linebackers, tweeners as you call them, guys who are made to be 3-4 outside linebackers. They have never known what to do with these guys. Famously with Rob Ninkovich. But really, they mostly avoided him in the draft. I remember when Barkevious Mingo was coming out of LSU, they had no interest because they didn't think he was big enough to be a defensive end. He certainly wasn't a linebacker. With Baun, though, they insist. We see linebacker. We see Sam and we see Mike. Michael Hodges, the linebackers coach, said it. He said when he had his first conversation with Jeff Ireland said the scouting department saw the same thing. So they see him making a transition. He was pretty much only an edge rusher in college who would drop back in coverage every once in a while. But what they see is they see that it can become a Sam or a Mike for them at linebacker. Think Alex Anzalone, think A.J. Klein. But obviously on third down packages, they're going to take advantage of his pass rush ability and probably rush him off the edge more than we're used to seeing linebackers in this defense. So I'm really curious because they have not used players like that a lot in the past, but we also know they looked at Jamie Collins in free agency. So I think there's a vision there for something maybe we haven't seen from the linebacker position all that much.
When you mentioned Ninkovich, I thought for sure you were going to say Kikaha, which was like another one of those guys.
Well, that's the other one. That's a perfect example. That's the only other one they really drafted high, and they never figured out what to do with him either. He was an end one year as a linebacker, another year. Winston Wilson. One year they tried to make him end, one year they tried to make him a linebacker. They have not figured out those tweener guys.
Yeah, that's such. I forgot about Marquez Wilson too. I mean, he came out of Illinois, didn't he? Am I right about that?
Yeah. No, he was a later draft pick. But, yeah, Kakaha is the only one they really invested a high draft pick in. And now he was supposed to be an end. Baun, they say they see linebacker in this guy. And look, everybody's raving about his skill set. At least that they have that vision for him. They have positions planned out for him. It's not like they don't know what to do with him. But it's hard to say, well, look at what they did with blank. That's what they're going to do with Baun, because there aren't a lot of blanks in their history.
That does make sense. There are blanks in Mad Libs, however, and we still have to play Mad Libs at some point. Hey, last thing before you go. It's been obviously an up and down past few weeks around the franchise. Look, you know the locker room and the culture and the organization as well as anybody, covering them as long as you have. Just a general sense, Mike, on how this team makes it through everything that's happened in the past couple of weeks.
Well, the thing I wrote, 2 days after, and really even before Drew Brees sent that open letter to Donald Trump that so many of his teammates applauded, the thing that impressed me was, we talked about Drew Brees' leadership for years, incredible leadership. He's an inspiring guy, and people follow his lead and everything. But in this case, he was sort of at the center of their turmoil. And what we saw the other leadership stand on this team, starting with Demario Davis accepting his apology the way he did right away on the morning shows. The next morning, we saw Michael Thomas come out, Cam Jordan, Alvin Kamara, openly, accepting Drew Brees' apology. Malcolm Jenkins talked with him privately. It was a positive discussion they all had. This is a team that has a lot of leaders. It's not just Drew Brees or bust. And at the same time, Drew Brees has handled this in a good way that's been received well by his teammates. These are not, there's not a division in the middle of this locker room that sort of looks like the same division we're seeing, in the political realm. These are guys who are going to be willing to listen to each other, not just stick their fingers in their ears. They're going to want to work together. They're going to want to learn from each other. They're going to want to say, how can I appreciate where you're coming from more? How can we work together? And we've already seen their efforts to do that. So there's going to be some guys who remain angry and hurt, no doubt about it. But we're also going to see a lot of effort from a lot of guys, including Drew Brees, that people know will wholeheartedly work toward being, unifying as much as they can.
Great stuff as always, Mike. We appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.